Hey, this is Thomas and Melissa from Catch the Buzz. This is our
Hi.
movie review of The Shift by Angel Studios. So Thomas could start out and tell us about how we ended up going to the movie in the first place.
So, I was skeptical about going to see this movie simply because it had a real sci fi feel to it. So, I didn't really think that we would be interested in seeing it because I didn't really think that it would have much context as far as gospel promoting messages. But I was at work one day and I got an email where they said, "Hey, here's some free tickets to go see the show." I didn't sign up for it or anything. They just sent it to me and said, "Hey, let's go. Here's some free tickets." So I booked it and called Melissa and said, "Hey, let's go see it."
Well, we have a couple other movies we're seeing this month, and so I was kind of like, well, we're really busy anyways. I'm not going to add this one on. But I'd seen a trailer for it. I think it was after during one of the episodes of The Chosen was at the theater, and seeing it there's a man named Kevin, and he gets into a car accident. This is in the trailer, like I said, and then he's found in the alleyway, and a man tells him that that he's the benefactor, takes him into this cafe, and then he starts telling him, giving him some choices of things, that he's like, I can move people, I can shift them from place to place, and in like different like timelines, dimension types of things. Anyways, and I was just like, oh, I don't want this kind of complicated story. I was like, I'm just not interested in it bad enough, because the man, the one that shifted people, he was presented more as like Satan, like the adversary. And I was just like, no, I feel like I'm going to be like annoyed and irritated or something that this situation could even happen. Because I'm one that I don't like the kind of story when they say, oh, there's a guy who runs the train, like tracks and stuff. And so his son and his child, he finds out, is going across this bridge and the train's coming too. But if he doesn't shift the tracks, the thing to the other tracks, the train is going to like wreck or something, or his child is going to die, and he has to choose. So you choose a bunch of people or your child. And I was like, nope, I'm not interested in those kind of choices and stuff. And so that's why I didn't really want to see it. But it was really interesting how it was presented, and of course, a lot of really good actors were in there. The acting was really great, with Elizabeth Tabish, who plays Mary Magdalene in The Chosen, and Patel, who plays
Paris is in it. Yeah, he plays kind of a backup role, but
the one that's Matthew in The Chosen.
yes, the one that's Matthew that's chosen. Kevin McDonough, which his probably most famous role is probably in Band of Brothers. He's been in a lot of other things too, a lot of war movies, seems like, but yeah, he's been in quite a few things. Sean Astin, which of course, if you've seen classics like The Goonies or Rudy, or more recently Lord of the Rings, he plays Samwise Gamgee, and he was even in Stranger Things.
Which is one of Thomas's favorite people that was in the
Yes.
movie. So he was like, well, Sean Astin's in there, so
Yep.
it shouldn't be too bad. Anyways,
Yeah, I was much more convinced to go and see it after I actually watched the trailer and seen who was in it too. Um, and I don't know, it kind of piqued my interest. What was this sci-fi movie the Angel Studios was putting out? So that was kind of a good motivating factor to see. Okay, well, something different. So
well, and honestly, my opinions about the movie was, so I'd seen the trailer a few times, and so that was like around the first part of the movie, the things that was going on. And then as they got into where he was going to be, he had a choice to make and stuff, I I got kind of a little bit confused about what was going on because there's things that happened that they talk to you about but don't show you some things that happened. But so I would say it feels like the story moves along fairly quick at different points and stuff.
Yeah.
And so
that's fair to say.
Yeah. And so I was a little bit like, did I miss something? What, But I did really like the part with Paris, and how the character he portrayed, and it was nice to hear him without an accent, and to hear him probably speaking from what we heard over at the Chosen conference that we went to. His speech was similar. His speech pattern was similar to that, so it was nice to see him more like himself. And then Elizabeth Tabish, it was good to see her, of course, without an accent either. And she did a great job, of course. And especially the man that played Kevin, he had a real challenge because they show him in different timelines. And so, he's the main character. And so he has to act differently, like, different versions of himself. So, but I would really say that, like, the benefactor, the one that plays, like, that, represents, like, basically Satan, the adversary, he's just too good. He has such a great intensity when he needs to, and he's just kind of scary, honestly.
Yeah.
He was just scary good. He was so good. And I felt like Kevin, the one that plays Kevin as well, with that, like I said, he had quite a challenge for him, but he did a really great job. I felt like, even though I was a little bit like, what's going on? I felt like it was a really good representation of life when you think about it. Because we all have different times in our life when we're like, what's going on? What am I doing? I don't know. I don't even think I know what I'm doing. And then somehow by, like, as they say, like, the grace of God, things work out. And so I thought that was actually a true to life representation that kind of surprised me, actually. I was a little bit, like, annoyed, just like in life. And then I was like, oh, here's the resolution. Oh, I feel like this all makes sense now. So
yeah. I mean, for anybody who's familiar with the story of Job from the Bible, it is very roughly based on that story, in a lot of the concepts that you learn in that story from the Bible. So I don't want to give away spoilers because I want you to go see it, because it's worth seeing.
And then tell us what you think in comments.
Yes. And but it basically shows the main character Kevin, who falls in love, and he ends up losing his family and his money and his home and everything, and he's taken to another world, essentially, where he's kind of abandoned there by the benefactor because he refuses to help him. So in the end, he has to find a way to overcome that because his goal is to get back to his wife, and he's faced with some extremely big challenges to do that. Some temptations, and he has to learn a lot of life lessons on how to overcome the natural man. But I think the biggest message that I got from the movie was that Kevin was greater than the sum of his mistakes, and how true that is for each of us that are really trying to follow, really trying to follow God and be good people, and that no matter how hard we try, we're still gonna fall. We're still gonna have problems and face challenges, and not to give up the faith that we have, just to get some type of reward.
Well, and I think trying to find a list right now. there was a list that I came across online, and this movie reminded me of it a lot. Hopefully I can find it real quick here. But it just talks about things that come from Satan and things that come from God, from our Heavenly Father. And helping us to recognize, because I know for a lot of people that we have a lot of different thoughts and ideas that come to us, and we're like, well, is God criticizing me? Is God chastening me for the mistakes that I've made? And so people will just kind of have this just beat themselves up kind of mentality. But I think that's one of the most important things is there's a point when Kevin is, it's like, do you think that he said, by the benefactor says to him, he's like, you think that you can do some little good things and that makes up for all the bad things that you've done? And I know that there's a lot of people that have those thoughts themselves, that they're just like, I've just messed up so bad, there's no way that I can make up for it. But as I was talking about in church, even the 12 apostles, when they were with Christ on the earth, they were with him, and he was explaining things to them, and they didn't, as I said in church, I'm like, they didn't get it then. Some of them, and it talks about how Jesus was kind of frustrated with them at times because he's trying to explain things, and they're just, he's like, I'm gonna not be here, guys. I'm gonna die, and other things are going on. They're like, well, who's your favorite? Who's your right-hand man here, Who's second in command kind of thing? Who's on your right and your left? And Jesus is like, wow, you guys are just, not hearing me. So I like to think that as we've read in the New Testament, the last sections where it's different books from the apostles, they, as I've read them, I didn't really internalize what they were saying before I read it, but I just kind of felt like I didn't really know what was going on, I guess, exactly. But I'm like, oh, this is the apostles. This is after Christ has died. And they, all these years later, and they're having to do their best to teach without him. And, and I believe it says in the scriptures too about how, he was, I'm sure he was hoping that they would, he knew that he had done what he could to teach them, and it was their agency and choice for them to listen and understand and follow what he had taught them. And so I just, feel like, gosh, if those apostles were with Jesus and they struggled and didn't get it, there's a lot of mercy for us. And so if we, God isn't one, it's not a God of fear, and I feel like Satan has twisted that word to change it from respect and how a child would not want to disappoint their parents, but it's out of love. It's not meant to be out of, you should be afraid you've done everything wrong and the condemnation is going to come upon you. And so I think that's what Kevin is presented with, is it's like, what things are from Satan and what things are from God. And I liked in the Chosen conference, there was a pastor teaching a sermon, and he said, can your God disappoint you?
Is it okay for God to disappoint you?
Yeah. And I felt like that was a really important lesson, because he's like, if he's your God, he can disappoint you and you still love and respect him, you try to do your best to understand, and that's okay. He's like, but if your love and devotion to God is conditional, then if he's gonna disappoint you and he's gonna say no, and he's not going to be your God anymore, then he's not really your God in the first place.
Right. Well, I think going back to what you said earlier about when the benefactor tells him that you'll never be good enough. Isn't that always the way the devil does things, by telling you half-truths? Because and that's kind of what the movie focuses on a little bit, is how the benefactor is able to tell him slight truths or half truths in order to try and motivate him to do something. Because in that case, he actually does. We as humans and mortals, we're never going to get there by ourselves. But that's why God created a Savior, a Redeemer.
He planned on
our
us messing
Lord
up.
Jesus Christ in order to make up for those shortcomings. And in the movie, the benefactor conveniently leaves that part out. So, but that's really true to life, and that was one of the things that really hit me in the movie was that message too.
Well, and I think that's one of the, to me, how I get frustrated with things in the world right now, because they're like, for example, oh, you have ADD, oh, you have ADHD, oh, you have these different attraction preferences and other things. You have these thoughts and feelings. Oh, this must be how you are. And the world is like, it feels like it's constantly, media and things are constantly trying to tell you like who you are, why you are the way you are, and making you feel like you don't have a choice anymore. Like you have these thoughts, this is how you are. But I think that's the biggest thing, and that is taught in this movie and stuff too, is that you do have a choice. And there isn't hardly any times where you don't have a choice. Sometimes you can't choose what the consequence is. You make the choice before, and then what happens, happens. But you can choose that when stuff happens, because of the choice you made, you still have a choice after to decide how you're going to react to it. And I just know for me, having worked at a big grocery store, where we were getting our temperature checked like a year and a half ago even, to for work, and we were getting our temperature taken, and it would ask us questions about if we were sick or anything, if we'd been in contact with anybody with COVID. And that, I was like, oh my gosh, that was like a year and a half ago here in Idaho. We were one of the first ones to lift a bunch of our bans and things, COVID restrictions. But that was still some of the ones that were in place, and it was just, and I'd go, man, that feels like it was so long ago. It wasn't that long ago. But anyways, I think that's, there's a lot of those things, circumstances that in other countries have experienced, I know, but here in the U.S. we generally haven't that much, where we're being dictated to by government and other things that you've got to do this way or else, and how much contention that caused. People died because of that. I know there was a video I watched of a lady in a hospital who was having a hard time breathing. That's why she was there. And there's a video of her she leaves her room and comes out, and she's standing by this pole or something, and she's in like a lobby or whatever, and she pulls her mask down, and like the security people are like, well, what are you doing? You have to go back. You have to pull your mask on. She's like, but I can't breathe. And they're like, you have to put your mask on. And then the camera ends up, they come towards her and grab her, push her against this pole, this pillar, and then the camera gets moved so you can't see what happens. And this lady, they show her later in a wheelchair, and she's like laying there, like kind of hung over the side and stuff. And later on, it says that she had passed away. And I thought, all of this because of a mask, And so I just think that for some of us, it just doesn't take that much. But especially if we're made to do something, I always say, even if you love chocolate cake, if they're like, hey, you have to eat that, none of us want to do what we're made to have to do. But that's the difference is with God. He gives us, God is love. And he does want to encourage and persuade and inspire us. But we always, our agency is our own to choose.
Right. So, we did miss one of the actors. Kevin his name's Kristoffer Polaha. And I don't know if I guess he actually did have a minor part in Jurassic Park Dominion. But he's mostly been in Hallmark movies. And the other one that we missed is Little James from The Chosen.
Oh, yes.
He plays a small part in there.
Mm-hmm.
James Walker Ross, I believe his name is. So you'll see him in there as well. Kind of a short little clip, but he's there.
Yeah, so it was so funny because I didn't know he was going to be, I
Yeah.
didn't realize it, and then I was like, oh, it's little James.
Yeah.
For those of us that love The Chosen, there was all of a sudden there was little James.
Yep.
So.
Overall, my overall impressions, good film. Good acting. The music I thought was really good too.
Yeah.
Even lots of action, plenty of action. There is a little bit of blood and gore, so be aware it is a PG-13 movie. Would I take kids to see it? Probably not anybody under about 12.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I was surprised that the people next to us had kids, and I was like, I wouldn't bring kids to this.
They weren't super young though, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe if you had some that were under 12 that were a little more mature and maybe knew quite a bit about the gospel, especially, like I said, that story of Job, they might be okay.
And that it would mean enough to them, hopefully, so they would be able to, yeah.
But I really felt like overall they took a good Bible story and threw in kind of this multiverse sci-fi twist to it that really actually helps tell the story in kind of a modern way that I think a lot of people in our day and age would understand.
Well, and for me, I know when it comes to the multiverse things and stuff like that, so I'm like, oh, this is so confusing. I'm done.
This wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I thought that they had a really good way of showing you different timeline dimensions or whatever without taking up too much time and pulling you away from like the focus of the story and stuff, just kind of having a good way to incorporate that without it being just distracting and more confusion and stuff. And I thought it was a good movie. And it was funny because if you had asked me, if you had stopped the movie probably about a half hour in, I would have been like, I don't know. This is the part where I'm getting kind of confused of what's going on and stuff. But then, especially when we got towards like the last, half hour, like 45 minutes, I would say for me, I guess once Paris Patel is in there, I'm like, oh, there's Matthew. And so I feel like that really just won me over. But Sean, I don't know how you say it. I don't know if you're supposed to say Sean Astin.
No, it's Astin.
Yeah, it's spelled Astin, so I'm always like, I don't know. Anyways, but he's just great, and he also has quite a complex character that he plays.
Yeah.
Also, and he's a pro. He's just very experienced and really good at it, and it's surprising to me too because as big of an actor as he is, it doesn't come off as though he is. When he's in the movie, he's just right in there along with all the other characters in his part, and it just felt like it fit well, better than I would almost kind of think and stuff, because I feel like after Lord of the Rings he just got, as a actor, got so big. So it was nice to see all the different people from The Chosen especially too, just all working out really well. I felt like the casting was really good, and like I say, the one that plays the benefactor with his hair that's like white, practically gray, and his piercing blue eyes is just for me, it was very effective. So, because you're like, oh, I just hate this guy. He's so good. Yeah. Oh, he's just wicked, But I think, too, like I said, it's a good way to show the story of Job. And it's a good way to help people to understand Satan and how he works. And I think it helps people have a real feeling of realness with their own life and seeing that parallel in this story, and helps people to kind of reevaluate things and sit there and being like, okay, when am I being manipulated here in things myself, and I see myself in this, being discouraged. So anyways, we enjoyed it. And we definitely recommend going to see it. And like we said, not taking younger kids to it probably. Anyways, So, Thomas and Melissa, we will talk to you later, and thanks for watching.
Have a good night.